On behalf of the Entrepreneurship Development Cell of St. Xavier's College Autonomous, Kolkata, it is with great pleasure that I extend a warm welcome to each one of you. With utmost honor, privilege, and gratitude, I introduce to you Mr. Akul Jindal, who is a pre-seed and seed investor at Venture Highway, and is even building a community for investment professionals at Knowledge Capital. Mr. Jindal has also been a KPMG analyst and will conduct a session today, bringing his expertise and knowledge to enrich our learning experience on the topic The Founder's Guide to Building and Scaling. We are extremely thankful to you, sir, for taking time out of your busy schedule for a session with us. On behalf of everyone at EDC, I extend my best wishes to all the participants for an insightful learning experience during this session. I now hand over the virtual podium to you, sir.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, guys. Really appreciate it. And I hope that for all the participants who are listening, that this experience provides them with something that helps them build better, scale faster, and build more meaningful companies. So excited to be here. Are we doing the Q&A or should I start? Just I
So
think.
you can start. So we'll start with the Q&A after you have the flow for approximately 40 to 45 minutes.
All right. All right. So cool. I think, guys, the reason that I'm here, honestly, when I saw the topic that they wanted me to speak on, which is how do you build a venture, and I was thinking, well, I haven't really built one that worked. So that was really the context with which I want to approach this session, which is, look, I'm not going to be able to tell you how to build a successful venture. But I think after one failure that I had of my startup in college, I can very confidently tell you what not to do. And I think that is what I'm here to share, which is common challenges, common problem statements that we as college students, I think, miss out on. I hope that given that you guys are coming from this prestigious institution and you guys are also 5, maybe 6 years younger to me, you're probably a lot smarter. You probably grew up with smartphones. So you would know a lot better. But the first thing I want to talk about is how do you identify a problem statement, right? And so there's a lot of romanticism around this, which is pick a problem that you face in your daily life, right? Or pick a problem that you're very passionate about, or pick a problem. Um, uh, how do you identify that problem statement? And I think one of the examples that I like to give here, which is the first one, is it's not that simple, right? Just as an example, all of us have at one point or another bumped our little toe on our bedside, right? And at that very moment, we have felt intense pain. So, is that a problem that we are facing? And is that something that we're dealing with in our daily life? The answer is yes. But does that mean that that's a very important problem statement? Are you going to pay someone $1,000 to solve that for you? Are you, even if that was important, why haven't you installed a simple improvement like a sponge on your bedside, right? Which would prevent that from happening. So I think that is one thing I want to leave with people, which is when I say problem statement, it can't be something as simple as saying, look, this is something that I face in my daily life. It has to be something more meaningful. The other problem statement that a lot of people, especially ones in hostels, think about is I want home cooked food, right? I miss my mother's cooking. There's a lot of Zomato, etc., that I want to do, uh, that I have to do because I don't have any other alternatives. And so people say, okay, look, this is a problem statement, which is, of course, much more valuable than bumping my little finger in the bedside. Why? Because the number one, this is an urgent problem statement for people, which is this is something that happens to you daily compared with probably once in every 3 months. Number two, this is more valuable because this is top of mind for you. So the first framework to give you here is what is the frequency of the problem statement? And how important is it for you on a priority framework? So is it in your top 5 or top 10 problem statements that you think about on a daily basis? So that becomes important. And so home cooked food is in one of those problem statements for anyone who's a hostler, for someone who's working in a different geography compared to where they were born. They're not living near their home. And so that is something they think about a lot. And I think this is where the second framework, second framework really comes in, which is just having demand, just having a problem statement is not enough, right? You need to also think, once you have that problem statement, can I actually service this need? Can I service this demand profitably? So that's where a lot of these businesses break, which is okay, there is a problem statement. I'm always hungry. I need home cooked food. But then who's going to cook that food for me? How am I going to ensure that it reaches my customer, right, in the right form factor, which is it has to be hot. It has to reach them in a certain amount of time. And the food cannot, there shouldn't be any spillage problem, and the quality has to be maintained because not, let's face it, as much as I love my mother's food, there are a lot of other people who just might not. So what does home cooked food really mean, and how do you scale that as a business? So I think that's where the second framework comes in, which is in addition to it being an important problem statement, which is it should be top 5 priorities for a business, top 10 priorities for an individual, right? The second framework here is, can you actually service that demand profitably? So the need has to meet the way you're going to service that demand. So there is demand, but can I service it profitably? Which is, can I identify the right type of customer cheaply enough? Can I then identify the right kind of supplier also cheaply enough who's providing me good quality products? And then can I connect both of them again in a capital efficient manner, which is, can I build logistics? And logistics is in the offline world. In the online world, it has to be a digital distribution. So even for Netflix, right, they are building a streaming play. The importance of latency cannot be overstated there. You want your content to be streaming at that very moment you plug in. Same for Spotify. So I think that's the first framework that I want to leave you guys with, which is, when you think about problem statements, how important are they? How many people really face those challenges? And can you actually solve this problem profitably? Can you service this demand? The second thing that I want to talk about, and this is, I think, a phase, is how do I find the right kind of co-founder, right? As a college student, very simple. I think I have with me here about 15 people from the EDC who are on this Zoom. I'm pretty sure that if I were to ask them this question, they'll probably pick 2, 3 others on the same Zoom and be like, okay, I'm going to start a business with this guy or that guy, right? But look, Krish starting a business with Dhruv is not really the answer, right? If they don't have complementary skill sets. So what you really need to be looking at is, are the two people who are coming together, are these people the best people to build this business, and not just individually but together? So you have to look at the complementarity of skill sets. And I think that is something that at least I missed out on in my first business. Back in college, I had 3 friends, and all 4 of us became co-founders of a consumer product, which was a software solution. And we realized on day 3 that it's very exciting. We have decided to start a company, but product banayega kaun, right? You need to have an engineer in the team. We were 4 business folks who had come together, and one of us was going to do market research, the others was going to do supplier partnerships, one was going to do demand generation. But who is going to come and actually develop the product and then get it on the Play Store, help us with digital marketing, and get it in the mobile phones of the customers? So that is something that we all miss out on a lot, because we don't think outside in when we say, how do I pick the right co-founder? We think inside out, which is, who are the people that I already know? And I think that becomes my second problem statement, which is, when I start looking inside out, I'm narrowing myself and I'm shooting myself in the foot when I'm starting a company. Because not only am I gatekeeping the number of potential co-founders that I could work with, I'm also restricting myself to people with the same interests, belief systems, or in some sense, the backgrounds as me, which is not the ideal fit for starting a company. You need someone who um, brings those complementary skill sets, is not afraid to disagree with you, right? Also, but also respects you professionally and can trust your judgment with regard to some issues and some problem statements. So that is the kind of co-founder that you have to look for. So when you start outside in, it's not to say that you should eliminate all your friends entirely. It's not to say that, look, I have 3 friends, because you're my friends, you can't be my co-founders. but it is to have that really hard and very difficult conversation of what is it that they can really do, right? It's not to say, "Arey, kar hi lenge." It's not to say that, look, this guy he doesn't know tech himself, but he can find a developer or he can learn how to code in 6 months. That's not your answer, right? There are hundreds and thousands of people building their startups today in different parts of the world. And so what you should really be thinking about is, um, what are the skill sets that I really need in this business? So it starts from saying, okay, when I said from the last framework, how can I service this demand profitably, right? That is what will give you the skill sets that you need to run a business like this. So when I'm thinking of Zomato, the kind of skill sets that I need is someone who has very good chops in consumer demand, which is sales and marketing and branding. And at the same time, someone who understands operational excellence, which is how do you ensure that the food is picked up at the right time from the right location by the right rider, delivered to the right customer in a certain amount of time frame. It is only then that you can improve your utilization, deliver that customer experience, and keep generating that demand consistently, right? So, and of course, you need to build a great product. So, those are the three, four things that you need to have. And so, once you have identified from your problem statement framework, which is what is my problem statement and what do I need to do to solve that problem, you can then trace it back to, okay, these are the 5 skills that I need. Now, how many of these skills do I have? How many of the skills I need at the core founding team? And how many can I solve for or hire for? Right? So you don't need to, by the way, at the founding team, have all of them, but you need to be able to bucket skills in the core and the non-core brackets. So if I'm building a consumer software company and I don't have an engineer with me, I'm being absurd. If I'm building an AI company and I don't have an engineer with me, I'm being absurd. But what I can do is I can always start a wealth management company without an engineer, because that is not a core part of building a wealth management, even if it's a tech enabled business. You can always hire for that skill. So identify what skills are needed in a business, break those down, break those down into core and non core. And after you've done that, then you identify, okay, who are the people outside of who I would conventionally look at who can actually fit this role, right? And by the way, having an idea is just not enough. So if you've identified a problem statement, if you've identified that this is demand that I can service profitably, and then beyond that, you want to go in and say, look, I have X, Y, Z skill sets. The biggest mistake we make is overestimating our our knowledge, and the second biggest mistake we make is underestimating our aptitude. So the goal is to make neither, which is to know what is it that you really know and also know what is it that you don't know, right? And can you learn it or can you not learn it? I think most of us, and more importantly, most of you guys can learn whatever it is that is needed to start a business in today's day and age. But what becomes tougher is to be humble about it and to tell yourself this simple thing that today I don't know this, right? So acknowledge that and then work towards building that. So that I think is what comes as the second part of the business. So finding your co-founder. And from personal experience for my startup, 3 friends, right, that we had recruited, 2 of them dropped off to take the CAT exam. Both of them are not doing their MBAs, 80 percentile, but it was still something that I wish I had known that these were their aspirations. So just simple problem statements, right? People need to be as passionate about the idea as you, right? One of them was just excited about being a founder. It had nothing to do with them actually believing in the idea they were building. So find someone whose goals are actually aligned not just with your interests or in your ability, but in the vision of the company and of what you guys are going to be doing. So that's second in terms of how you should think about finding a co-founder. Uh, in the first 5 months of my journey as a founder, we had all 4 co-founders. Month 7, 2 of them dropped, and month 11, I was the only one left. I did have a check in my hand from a seed investor, but it did not matter, right? So be very, very thoughtful in terms of who you select as your co-founder. Don't default to your friends. Give it serious thought. Give it as much thought as you're probably giving while sending that risky message on Instagram, probably more, because this is actually, here's what we say, right? You can get out of a marriage, right? You can, but you can't get out of a startup with a co-founder that you don't like, because being with a co-founder is like having a kid, right? And the kid is always there. So be very careful who you partner with. Um, the next thing I think I wanted to talk about is how do you pick the right coach or the right mentor for yourself, right? This happens. Okay, you've identified what problem you want to solve. You've found the right team to build it, and now you're thinking, okay, there are 10,000 ways of solving this problem. How do I know what's the best one, right? You have a hypothesis. What is the right time to continue working towards a problem statement? What is the right time to give up? What is the right time to hire someone? What is not the right time? What is the kind of skill set that I need today versus 6 months from now? And as a student founder, it gets really hard. How do you answer all of these questions when you are probably at that stage in your life when you have the least amount of capital and the most amount of time, and that's the only resource that is at your beck and call? So how do you do that? I think the next step here is to be able to identify and pick the right coach or mentor for yourself. And here again, we make the mistake, or at least I made so. The mistake I made was I went to a person who had never built a company in their life, and not even built a company, had never worked at a startup, but they were working at McKinsey as a business analyst, right? I was a 19-year-old, they were 25, and I thought this guy is IIT plus McKinsey. This person is going to be the best person to guide me. But really, um, it did not matter, right? Because not only did they not have an experience of being a startup founder or working at a startup, there are multiple other challenges that you need to think about, which is starting with, is this an individual who has nothing to gain from me? And which is a very important thing to think about, slightly ironical, which is the perfect mentor or the perfect guide actually has nothing to gain from you or from their opinion of you, right? So the way this works is, let's say there is an individual who I would say is a family member who is doing very well commercially, right? For them, the incentive is that they want to maintain those family relationships. And so when your dad or your mom call them and they're like, okay, you know what, my son is starting up, guide them. Their incentive has nothing to do with showing you the mirror. Their incentive is, okay, how do I maintain this relationship with my brother, my sister, my nephew, my niece, right? And so they will not be in a position to give you unbiased advice. And so that's our default, right? We look for networks, we look for people who are easily accessible to us and have done something well. So, firstly, what context have they done well in? So, a consultant or a banker might be professionally very successful, making crores of rupees a year. But if they have never thought about building a company, if they've never started up, right? Or even if they've started up but not in the right domain, can you really work with them, right? Can you take advice from them? I think the answer to that you should very carefully think about. In my head, it's a clear no. There are ancillary benefits to working with a founder, but I would be very careful from whom I take advice. So that's one, which is, do they even have the relevant knowledge? Number two, what are their incentives? There are three types of people all of you will meet, and I'm sure that there are people you've come across on LinkedIn who are charging you money for advice, right? So there are people who will say, okay, I'll do a 1 hour business planning session with you for 5,000 rupees. Okay, I'll create your startup consulting kind of a model for 25,000 rupees. I'll build your Excel for 50,000 rupees. The problem with that is that these guys are not mentors. They are service providers. And there's a big difference between the two. A mentor is someone who's unbiased, unafraid, and can tell you whether what you're doing is right or wrong. They're not motivated by the incentive. That 50,000 is not what is going to drive their decision. It ideally should be immaterial to them. But a service provider will be very concerned about how you think about them more so than the quality of the product that they're delivering. So they are more focused on building and maintaining and cultivating that relationship. So that is something to think about, which is, okay, there is this individual who will guide me, who seems to be the best. And I think, which is what extends to my uh, thought process on what consultants or slash so-called experts on TopMate are doing. I'm generally very worried about them. 500 rupees, 1 hour session break, start your own company, 1 hour session for CAT preparation or whatever. I think when the incentives are more aligned towards um, them receiving appreciation or financial incentive from guiding you, it is very hard for them to remain unbiased, right? So be very careful who you speak to in that sense. So the ideal mentor then is someone who has the relevant experience, either in that space, in that domain, or at a very abstract level, understanding of how companies get built, right? And so there's a great book which is on one of Silicon Valley's best coach, Bill Campbell. It's called the $1 Trillion Coach, right? He was coach to Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, etc. And so those are the people that you can look to and say that not only had they done these roles and guided these founders, they did not actually have an incentive in their financial success, right? Not at least something that was material to them. So the right kind of coach is doing it because they can. It's doing it not because they have to. It's not because their next meal is coming from the success or the fee that you guys are paying, right? So their incentive has to be delinked from your success. Only then, their incentive has to be delinked from your opinion of them, which is it can't be like a consultant. It can't be like that Yogi Baba who will keep asking you to pay 500 rupees on Astro Talk because they want you to come next time. You can't just have those kind of people be your coaches. So be very thoughtful on who you pick as the right kind of coach, the right kind of mentor for your journey as a founder. And I think the last piece that I want to leave you with, which is deeply personal to me, and I think one of the biggest reasons I failed as a founder, as a student entrepreneur, is because I think at that stage of life, I was super, super excited about the idea that I'm starting something and of pouring my heart into consumer research. Here's some of the mistakes I made. I surveyed 100 people from my own school and college on whether what I was building made sense or not, right? I went to Statista and looked for market sizes, right? I went to some people who were my seniors in college, sent them messages on LinkedIn that if I did this, would you do that? And they said yes, which is if I had this product, would you pay for it? If I did this, would you connect me to XYZ guy? And so that is three basically fatal ideas that I had, which are very important to think about, which is, are you directing your energy in the right fashion, in the right channel? So, first thing, don't be a founder because it's easy, right? A founder is not someone who becomes a founder for the idea of it being, and I call it a romantic founder, someone who's perpetually a founder but hasn't built anything. You'll see some of these people in your college, most likely saying, for about 2 years, I'm a founder, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, but you'll never really see them having done one assignment, one product, one pilot test with other people. So that I think is one mistake I made, which is I did a lot of research, but I never acted on it. And so today, I think the only thing to think about when I look back on that is people who should think about starting up should have an action bias, which is to actually go out, build the product that you're thinking about, to test it out, to get a customer, right? And I think those people have a much higher, much faster pace of learning than someone who is just ideating on what the best product could look like. And I think for this, the story that you can probably go back to is the first shipment that Steve Jobs delivered, right? The first shipment that he delivered of 50 hardwares, right? That was not a fully assembled computer as was ordered. It was mostly a bare bones kind of a structure in terms of something that would just barely fulfill the requirement of the customer. And so the hardware shop owner still paid him for it, right? They took the delivery of those 50 chipboards. They still paid Steve Jobs. But was it a finished product? No. But did that mean that they never started on this? They did a demo, they received an order, and they fulfilled it no matter how they could at that time. It was not the best product. If you guys look back at this other company, which is very much in the news right now, NVIDIA, and if you listen to Jensen Huang's um, journey of how they built the first GPU, you'll understand that their first GPU, which was supposed to be 10x better than the competition, actually failed a lot of benchmarks, right? So whatever they had promised they would deliver, they failed to deliver a lot of those products. but it is not to say that they did not create that chip and still did not ship it out. Which is, was it the best product that they think they could have done? No. But was it a product that was functional enough to still be of importance in the market? Was it still good enough to create value? Yes. And that's what they ended up doing. So I think these are some things to think about, which is, don't just keep researching, don't just keep reading, don't just be put on your LinkedIn, I'm a founder of this company, and sit in a room and create these large sort of business plans. Go out, be there, test your theories, and nothing is going to help you grow faster than customer feedback. So if you want to tomorrow say that I'm going to start this edtech product, right? And your goal is I'm going to help children learn math better. Create the first version of that product. It doesn't have to be a tech product. Let's say you want to do flashcards. Why don't you create those flashcards? Why don't you manually create those flashcards? Identify few people that you do not know, by the way. These have to be people who are picked at random from any location where you would any location, any school probably that you can go to and visit, and then in that setting educate them with those flashcards, and then determine whether this is a product that's working or not. If in principle you see that product is working, then how do you expand that? Maybe the next answer is not to launch an online product, but to expand that to 5 packs of flashcards for 5 different students, right? Maybe the answer is to make 100 packs of cards after that. Maybe then the answer is, how do I make it a digital product and how do I start distributing that, right? Don't think that the first version of your product has to be it. That is never the answer. Test in the cheapest possible manner to see whether what you're thinking works or not. Once you have identified, validated that, that's when you start shipping and that's when you start building at scale. The simple example to think about is Ather, right? Ather first scooter came around 2017-18 vintage. They've been in development for 4 5 years, but did that mean that they stopped, or they said, look, I'm not going to deliver an electric scooter till about 2024 when it reaches that peak capability? That was never the answer. The answer was that I need to build a product that is valuable today. I need to ship it, get feedback, and then keep iterating, keep improving myself. The same goes for Tesla, the same goes for BYD, Xiaomi, all of the companies that you look at today. They always build, they always improve, and that's how they survive. The kiss of death is when you keep romanticizing your journey as a founder and you never act on it. I think for a great founder, one of the quotes that I've loved and I heard recently is that people who are romantics, they always think about it's going to be very hard. But really, the founders who have that action bias, who build large outcomes, ask themselves a very different type of question. They say, how hard can it be? And that's what differentiates them. So I think that's my closing thought for everyone here, which is to be a student founder, identify the right kind of problem statement, identify how important it is for your customers, how many of them exist. Can you service that profitably? Once you identify what it takes to service that demand profitably, identify those skill sets, break them into core and non-core, and find the right co-founders for yourself. Pick the right coaches and mentors whose incentives are not aligned to you paying them a fee or you liking them, but for their advice being correct. And lastly, of course, have an action bias. Be committed to doing something, not just thinking about it, not just romanticizing the idea of being a founder, because trust me, there's nothing romantic about it 3 years in when you haven't built anything. That's just not how it plays. So start today, start in the right way. And I think you guys are at a stage where there's enough and more guidance available, be it online, be it through people in the startup ecosystem. And I'm sure that you guys will be able to create great businesses. So yeah, that's it from my end. Thank you.
So do we start with the questions?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, sir, for such an insightful session. We have a question. Are there any specific milestones or metrics you prioritize for a startup?
Look, I think this becomes a question around probably my role as an investor. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Okay. So I think as an investor, look, it is very contextual to the industry that you're um, building in, which is if I'm looking at an edtech company, I'm trying to assess whether you're able to improve learning outcomes, and that improvement in learning outcomes will come through mostly in the kind of customer NPS you have, and then their repeatability, etc. Right? In the same way, for a fintech customer, that metric is going to look very different, which we call as transaction value per customer, right? So if you're a payments product, I want to know how frequently are you using my app and how much money are you transacting through it. So depending on different types of industries, the metrics are different, but the idea is the same, which is what we are trying to assess as investors is, do you have customer love, which is our customers finding the experience of working with your product, with your service, much better than whatever existing alternatives are providing to them. So it all boils down to what that metric of customer love could look like. Typically, we talk about it as an improvement in the core transaction metric. Transaction metric doesn't have to be cash, but transaction metric in Facebook, for instance, could be sending a message or adding a friend. So, is there an improvement in that core transaction metric over time for a user? If that is happening, that we would deem as, at least I would personally deem as a good business, because that is showing me that there is customer love and that there is a delta over the existing behavior.
Thank you, sir. So we have another question. What financial sources are accessible to entrepreneurs at various phases of development?
Financial resources, right? So for
Yeah,
fundraising,
yes.
yeah, so I think today that there's a lot more funding solutions slash sources available or accessible to student founders. One thing is, I think there's a Government of India mission which is setting up incubators all across colleges, right? And so these incubators are mandated to write checks for anywhere from 5 to 15 lakh rupees as a first investment in your companies. So I think that is one of those initiatives which is accessible to all of you at that point, which is in your college, in your school. And then I think Delhi government specifically has started this Delhi Blasters program, and I think they had 80 crores or something in capital that they were providing. In addition to that, for specific types of industries, you have grants that are available. So there is a BRAC grant, for instance, right, which is in biotechnology, in alternative energy. There is a space tech grant as well for that matter. So I think for a student founder, the funding sources available start from there, which is at the lowest stage, what you are looking at is grants and incubators. But of course, given we at Venture Highway have invested in a lot of student founders who started building right out of college, I would also say that venture capital is very much accessible to you. There are enough founders who have come out of IITs and BITS Pilani for today, but I think the next sort of networks are going to come from colleges like yourself, which is why can't these student founders come from St. Xavier's College? I don't know. I think, and I have full faith that the next set of founders are going to come from these colleges who are going to build better consumer products. So that's my belief. So yeah, venture capital funding is also highly accessible.
Thank you, sir. So we have another question. Can you walk us through the pros and cons of keeping the startup bootstrapped and fundraising? And secondly, which factor, according to you, is the most relevant while deciding this?
Got it. So I think the difference between the two, right? Which is should you raise money or should you stay bootstrapped, has a lot to do with like I said, what is the problem that you're solving and how can you service that demand profitably? Is there a cliff till which point you need to do upfront capital investment, right? Or is there a point for which you need money to scale faster, right? Which is to say, could Flipkart have possibly been built at a slower pace had they not raised VC funding? I think the answer is yes, right? Could Meesho have been built similarly? The answer is yes. It's nothing is stopping these businesses from getting built. But the question is, do you want to grow fast and how fast is it really? Yeah, how fast do you really want to grow and where is it that you want to go? So for businesses that have that aspiration, right, which is that I want to create a 10,000, 15,000 crore company. And I know it's very hard to really think about that when you're a college student sitting there and being like, okay, I'm going to create this mammoth business, right? Or to say that there are other companies which are doing, say, just fine. They're doing 100 crores of revenue right? But they're profitable and they're making 30 crores of profit after tax, which is coming to you as a founder. So I think it depends on what your goals in life are, which is what kind of problem statement do you want to solve, and what is it that you envision for yourself personally, right? So that is plays a big role in saying, do you want to build a bootstrap company or do you want to build a funded company? The other way to think about it is that once you build a bootstrap company, there is no one you report to potentially other than your co-founder, other than if you're working with your family, you report to them, right? Which is where is the money going? How are we making money tomorrow, etc. But the moment you build a funded company, you have investors to report to who are seeking a return on their money. So the journey does get slightly tougher, right? You do have accountability. And I think the higher sort of degree of scrutiny comes in to where that money is going, what is happening. And in some cases, infamously, I think we have seen a lot of rifts coming between the investors and the founders, which may or may not happen. Hopefully, for most founders, they won't. But in case they do, they could also be a significant source for problems. Building a company is hard enough as is, right? So it just depends on how big do you really want to build, what is your ambition, and in that pursuit, is it really important? Because do you want to build this company in 10 years, or are you okay building this slowly over 50 years? And if you're okay, if you want to build this in 10 years, are you okay to have someone overseeing your decisions and potentially having a stake in what the company could and could not choose to do tomorrow? So I think those are three things to think about.
Thank you, sir, for your knowledge. Thank you, sir, for your knowledge and expertise on this matter. We have another question. Can you explain the difference between debt and equity financing, and what factors should student consider while choosing between them?
Yeah, students, if anyone is offering you debt financing, just don't take it. I mean, I'd be highly, highly concerned with people who are giving students debt financing. Uh, Most of us, at least I know for myself, समोसे खाने के पैसे नहीं थे कॉलेज में. So hardly I would know that I would have been able to service my debt as a student founder, right? Look at grants, look at equity. The problem with debt and the problem with being able to manage cash flow is that for most of us, it becomes extremely hard at that stage. It makes sense if you have a business that generates cash flow and hopefully is profitable. But if you're a student founder who's building a tech company where you know the costs are going to be loaded upfront, but the revenues are going to come 5 years down the line, please avoid debt unless it comes with like 0% interest rate, which is, I think, a startup India scheme, right? So 0% interest rate, you can pay it back in 5, 7 years. That is okay. But otherwise, if there's a debt that you have to pay constant interest on, please don't. Most of you split wise पे उधार बचे होंगे. Please just don't go towards debt. Yeah.
Your insightful input is truly valued, sir. Sir, we have another question. Can you provide some practical tips for college student with no prior finance experience on how to go about building a basic financial model for their startup idea?
Uh, Yeah, you guys are from Saint Xavier's. I don't think I should be answering that question. You guys would, most of you would know how to build a basic financial model, right? But for those of probably in the audience who don't know, look, the answer is very simple. Look at how much money is coming in and how much money is going out. Everything else you can factor in. So no one really cares on what X margin or Y margin looks like when you're starting up a company. All they care about is how many people do I need to service, with how much product slash service do I need to sell them to get to what level of revenue for me to break even slash turn profitable. And that's it. So think about it that way, which is there a customer demand and can I service it profitably? Create that basic equation and then start putting costs and revenue drivers in that equation. Don't think about it as if you have to build a very complicated three statement financial model where the expectation is that, look, I have to be too accurate to the T on saying, is it a 0.31% growth rate or 0.32% growth rate? You are not the economic advisor to the Prime Minister of India. That is not your job. Your job is to build a company and to service customers' demands, right? And this is not a college assignment, by the way, where your like your professor is going to ask you, it's 0.3 or 0.4% in growth rate. Just don't spend too much time. Think about it. Really do think about it. Think about your assumptions, but don't spend too much time. You have a lot more on your plate. If you can service customers well, if they are satisfied by you and what you're doing, then everything else will fall in line.
Thank you, sir, for your insightful answer. We have just one last question. For startups specifically in the fintech sector, how should they go about creating an impact in the market given that many big players have predominantly captured the market?
Uh, this is a very, very interesting question, right? And that's because fintech is one of those highly, highly regulated industries, right? So there are two ways to think about it. One is what you've said, which is there are companies in the space which are highly, highly capitalized. So that makes it already hard. But the other way to think about it is, uh, it is a sector where you have a regulator, actually two, probably three, right? So you have RBI, you have SEBI, you have IRDAI, who are looking very closely at your activities and, um, in the spirit of ensuring customer protection. So what that means is that you need to be on your toes at all times, need to be able to understand regulations and be able to iterate on your business in a very quick fashion there. So I think, um, fintech is an industry that will continue to have startups being built, but it is one of those industries where I think it is hard for younger founders to come in and create a breakout product. That is not to say it hasn't been done. One of our portfolio companies, FamPay, has done that. There's a few founders I know and personally admire who are today even beyond FamPay, who are doing that, right? So, it is not to say that you shouldn't build in this industry, but it's extremely hard. And it is not because of competition, but the real question, or the real introducer of agony in the space, is to say, can you work in a space which is highly regulated, which has different levels of complexities? And it's no longer just about servicing customer demands, but at the end of the day, meeting those compliance requirements. So I think it becomes hard for a young founder to say that I'm going to build a fintech company. So I'm a bit concerned, I'm a bit wary. And so unless you are very passionate and you know you can resolve those, or you can work through that degree of complexities, I would urge student founders to think more on other sectors. That's me just being as candid as possible.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for sharing your knowledge and expertise on this matter. Your response is deeply appreciated. Everyone, please note that the form for availing the 5 hours of non-academic credit will be rolled out in the chat box.
As we conclude this insightful webinar, we are confident that the valuable insights shared today will benefit our attendees in their future pursuits. Mr. Akul Jindal has truly embodied the essence of life by inspiring us to pursue our dreams while positively impacting others. On behalf of the Entrepreneurship Development Cell of St. Xavier's College Autonomous, Kolkata, I sincerely thank Mr. Akul Jindal for generously sharing his vast knowledge and experience. It is an absolute honor and privilege to have had the opportunity to host such a respected personality. A special mention to our respected principals, Reverend Dr. Dominic Savio, SJ, and Vice Principals, Reverend Dr. Joseph Kulendai, SJ, Reverend Dr. Peter Arokian, SJ, and Professor Bertram Da Silva for encouraging us to pursue greatness and live up to the great Xaverian reputation. I also thank our faculty advisor, Dr. Arup Kumar Mitra, for his leading supervision and support at every step. We sincerely acknowledge our attendees for being patient and interactive, as well as for putting forth such compelling questions. Last but not the least, I extend a deep sense of appreciation for all the support, timely implementation, and guidance provided by the members of the Entrepreneurship Development Cell. Once again, thank you all for tuning in with EDC. Have a pleasant day.